So good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmates. So we are now in the topic about the methods of modern psycholinguistics. But before that, we will first tackle about what is modern psycholinguistics. So according to the definition provided, it is a combination of psychology and linguistics to study how language is processed and represented in the human mind. It focuses on on understanding the cognitive processes involved in language comprehension, production, and um, acquisition. Now, this field, or the modern psycholinguistics, emerged in the mid 20th century. It it builds upon the foundation of the traditional psycholinguistics, which studies about which stud which which focused on the study about language structure and grammar. So this field aims to answer questions about language, such as how we understand how we understand the meaning of words and sentences, how we can produce coherent and grammatically correct speech, how language is acquired by children, and how language processing is affected by factors such as context, individual differences, and language disorders. So now we are on the methods of the modern psycholinguistics. Uh, Psycholinguist, the person that studies modern psycholinguistics, used various research factors such as experimental methods, neuroimaging techniques, eye tracking, computational modeling, lesion studies, psycholinguistics assessment, and behavioral observation to investigate how language is processed in the brain and how it influences our thoughts, our behavior, and our social interaction. So to know more about the methods of psycholinguistics, the methods of modern psycholinguistics, my group mates will explain further, uh, explain explain it one by one, starting with the experimental methods.
Good day. Our group is all about modern psycholinguistic, and what I'll be going to tackle is one of the method of modern psycholinguistic, which is experimental method by Constanze Vogel. So this method has is six criteria, which I will be going to introduce. So the first criteria is the rationale behind experimental approach. So to study a language production, language comprehension, language representation, and language acquisition means largely to ask about the process are to ask what processes are involved, what mechanisms underlie, and what factors contribute to the phenomena explored. Therefore, the experiment is one of the most important methodological approaches within psycholinguistics. Its basic idea is to systematically manipulate certain variables while controlling for the effect of others as a way of dealing with the problem of scientific explanation, as opposed to the problem of description, which will be tackled by other methods. If we are to find out how and why something occurs, we need to compare different conditions with respect to their effects on the phenomena under investigation, and that's what experiments are about. So the second criteria is the definitional criteria of an experiment. Experiments study the effects of one variable on another. The main idea is to systematically vary conditions in order to determine their effects on some measures of language processing. Those variables which are measured in the dependence on the experimental conditions are called dependent, and those which are manipulated directly by the experimenter and constitute the experimental conditions are called independent. These aim to reveal causal or conditional relations between independent and dependent variables. So the third criteria is the research hypothesis and the wheel of science. This criteria has the three part, which are hypothesis prediction and theories. Secondly, operationalization and measures. Third, the data analysis. And fourth, the interpretation theory, and novel predictions. So the purpose of the psycholinguistic experiments is to verify hypotheses about human language processing. Hypotheses concern the relation between independent and dependent variables. Research hypotheses are at the very heart of experimental method. Performing experiments means basically testing hypotheses about the effects of independent variables onto dependent variables. Where do the hypotheses to be tested come from? Uh, they can arise out of singular observations, practical needs, qualitative research, or pilot studies. However, more often than not, they are derived from psycholinguistic theories and models of processing. So to test experimental hypotheses, they need to be operationalized, transformed into concrete, observable events, and measurable response variables. So the fourth criteria is the experimental designs. The basis for drawing conclusion from experimental evidence is the experimental design used, the method chosen to manipulate independent variables and to control for others. It affects both the techniques which can be applied for inferential statistics and the logical inference to be drawn, together with the other factors such as coherence of data patterns, convergence of result from different resources. So the fifth criteria is specific experimental paradigms. This criteria has two parts. First, the experimental methods used in studies of language production. The second is the experimental methods used in studies of language comprehension. So there is a multitude of experimental paradigms, the use of which depends on the particular questions investigated. In order to study condition well, under which a certain variant is produced, frequency of use are measured in studies of object naming or verbal localization. This can also be compared and related to other types of data, such as a rating of typicality, goodness, validity, or usability of linguistic expression, and also response for time for verification. Experimental methods used for examining language comprehensions vary widely, depending also on the area of study. Examples of methods used to study word recognition includes gating paradigms, a repeated presentation in noise, phoneme monitoring, shadowing of continuous speech, and detection of mispronunciation. So this experimental approach provides a valuable tool for studying language processing, and a large number of elaborate and sophisticated techniques have been developed to address research questions which are difficult to tackle. The result of this type of research can fruitfully be compared with research from other methodological approaches and related studies from other research areas.
Good day, ma'am. My topic is all about neuroimaging techniques. So when we say neuroimaging is the use of quantitative or computational techniques to study the structure and function of the central nervous system. Neuroimaging techniques allow us to create image of brain structure. Moreover, they can measure the activity in different sites of the brain. So the purpose of these techniques is to create a maps of either brain structure or brain activity. There are three functional or most common neuroimaging techniques. Functional magnetic resonance imaging or fMRI, positron emission tomography or PET, electroencephalography or EEG. So when we say functional magnetic resonance imaging, is a measuring changes in blood flow to different brain areas. And when we say positron emission tomography, is measures brain activity by recording the changes in blood flow to different brain areas. And last, electroencephalography or EEG to measure the electrical activity of the brain. These three neuroimaging techniques allows researchers to link the activity of specific brain areas to behavior and cognitive functioning. They also give researchers a unique insight into the difference in brain functioning between a healthy person and a person with neurological disease.
The third one is the eye tracking. So What is eye tracking? So, eye tracking is a technology that enables the measurement of our eye movements, eye positions, and points of gaze through various technological processes. It identifies and monitors a person's visual attention in terms of location, objects, and duration. Also, eye tracking is a technology that helps us understand where people look and how their eyes move. It involves using special cameras or sensors to track the movements of our eyes. By doing this, we can learn about what catches our attention and how we process information visually. So imagine, gabasa ka book. As your eyes move across the page, an eye tracker can follow those movements and create a map of where your eyes are focusing and how long they stay on each word or sentence. This can tell us how fast you read, which part of the text you find interesting, and how you understand the words and sentences. Eye tracking can also be used to study other things, like how we look at the picture, how we watch videos, or even how we interact with computer screens. It helps researchers and scientists learn more about our brain work and we see and understand the world around us. So here are some specific examples of how tracking is applied and its significance in different domains. So first we have the reading research. So eye tracking has been extensively used in reading research to understand how individuals process written text. By tracking eye movements, researchers can examine reading patterns such as fixation or the pauses on words, saccades or the eye movements between fixations, and regressions or the backward eye movements. Eye tracking allows researchers to investigate reading speed, word recognition, comprehension, and the impact of factor like word length, word frequency, and syntactic structure on reading behavior. So number two, we have the language comprehension. So eye tracking is used to investigate how individuals allocate attention during language comprehension. Number three, the language production. So eye tracking is also used in studies of language production. For instance, researchers can investigate the planning and execution of speech by tracking eye movements during speech production tasks. Number four, the second language acquisition. So eye tracking has been employed to explore second language acquisition processes. By tracking eye movements, researchers can compare the reading behavior of native and non-native speakers. So the last one, we have neuropsychological research. Eye tracking is valuable in studying individuals with language and cognitive impairments. For example, in individuals with aphasia, eye tracking can reveal patterns of gaze behavior during language tests, providing insights into the underlying language um, processing deficits. Eye tracking can also be used to assist um, attentional abnormalities and visual scanning patterns in individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders like autism spectrum disorders.
Good day, everyone. I am Mariam Safati Hinando, and I am from the group 2. And my task today is to report about computational modeling. Computational modeling is a method that uses computers to simulate the behaviors of complex systems using mathematical modeling. It can be used in a variety of fields, including physics, chemistry, biology, economics, and engineering. The power of computational modeling comes from its ability to handle problems that are too complex for analytical solution or too costly or dangerous for experimental studies. It's a way of conducting virtual experiments in a controlled environment where you can change parameters and initial conditions to see how the system responds. Computational modeling is incredibly important in many fields for several reasons. First, for understanding complex systems. Second, for prediction and forecasting. third, for cost and time efficiency. Fourth, optimization and design. Fifth, risk assessment and decision making. And sixth, education and communication. Overall, computational modeling plays a crucial role in advancing scientific understanding, supporting decision making processes, and driving innovation in a whole wide range of fields. Thank you. That's all.
So our next topic is all about lesion studies. Lesion studies, this involves studying individuals who have suffered brain damage that affects their language abilities. By observing what language abilities are impaired, researchers can infer which brain areas are necessary for the abilities. One example of lesion studies is the study of hippocampus and recognition memory. Lesion is an area of abnormal or damaged tissue caused by injury or infection or also diseases. It also allows the scientists to observe any loss of brain function that may occur.
Psycholinguistic assessment. This assessment involves the use of standardized tests to measure various aspects of language in individuals. These tests are designed to evaluate different components of language, including vocabulary, grammar, and phonology. First is the vocabulary assessment. This assessment measures an individual's knowledge and understanding of words. These can include tasks such as defining words, identifying synonyms and antonyms, or selecting the appropriate word for a given context. These tests help assess the depth of an individual's vocabulary. Next assessment is the grammar assessment. This assessment focuses on evaluating an individual's understanding and use of grammatical rules and structures. These tasks may involve identifying grammatical errors in sentences, completing sentences with appropriate grammatical forms, or judging the grammaticality of sentences. These tests provide insights into an individual's grammatical competence. Next is the phonology assessment. Examines an individual's ability to perceive and produce the sounds of a language. It may involve tasks such as identifying and discriminating between different sounds, pronouncing words accurately, or recognizing patterns of sound changes. These tests help assess an individual's phonological skills. To further discuss what is psycholinguistic assessments, these assessments are typically standardized, meaning that they have been developed and normed on a large sample of individuals. These assessments are widely used in clinical settings, educational settings, and research contexts. It is also important to note that psycholinguistic assessments are just one tool among many in the field of psycholinguistics. They provide valuable qualitative data about language abilities, but they are not the sole determinant of an individual's linguistic competence. Language is complex, and assessments should be considered alongside other factors such as context, individual differences, and qualitative observations. That is all on psycholinguistic assessment. Thank you.
This is the last method, the last but not the least, the behavioral observation. It is a functional utilitarian approach in that it focuses on the clearly observable ways in which the client interacts with his or her environment. So, behavioral observation may be used informally as part of an interview or in a testing session or as a method in its own right. Behavioral observation scale are a measurement tool that measures the frequency of a behavior. They use a 5-point scale. 5 is almost always and 1 is almost never. The observer selects the appropriate value to match the behavior of the person being observed. So, why is behavior observation important? It is useful for the assessment of persons with limited verbal abilities. So, how do you observe behavior? So, first is you need to focus your attention by sitting back and observe. So, consider what is happening before, during, and after a behavior that could be linked to it. So, you need to pay attention and write down details. And what is the essence of conducting a behavioral observation? So, it is a technique to identify and correct unsafe behavior. So, it involves watching and analyzing.
Each of these methods provides a different perspective on the complex processes involved in understanding and producing language. By combining these methods, psycholinguists can gain a more complete understanding of how language works in the mind.